Good day. Welcome to another edition of Ibima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. Before I continue, I urge you to please press the like button. And if you're new to my show, I urge you also to subscribe. Are we seeing the last days of the Russo-Ukrainian war? Are we in the end phases of it? If you play chess, is this the end game? The last half of the game where the board is clear and you're almost sure that these are the last few pieces that you're going to play with. So are we in the end game of the Russian-Ukraine war? It's a very pertinent question because there's a lot of talk about peace now. A few years ago, this war started, and it obviously has not gone the way that the Ukrainians wanted. It has not gone the way the European backers of Ukraine wanted. It has not even gone the way that the Americans had hoped and expected when they supported Ukraine. Quite a lot of things had not gone as I'd expected because wars tend to create this situation, unintended consequences. But one thing that we all know is that when wars end, there are resolutions and there are treaties. And most times, some countries lose territories, some countries gain territories, and sometimes empires are lost. The First World War led to the fall of the Russian and the Ottoman Empire. Their territories were divvied up and became the protectorates of the British and the French. World War II also created its own reality with those who lost the war, losing quite a lot of territories. And there was a lot of sharing out of territories by the victors. And one of the great things that the Second World War did is that it created a power that nobody saw coming, and that power became the next enemy for the next 80 years, and that was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union in Central Asia, Europe and Eurasia there, and China also, where communism rose from the ashes of the Second World War. So we have a situation where wars tend not to be as planned. But for the Russians continue to maintain that they are going to achieve all the outcomes of this special military operation, as they call it. We may be seeing the last days of the Ukraine-Russian war. Why do I say this? President Trump's peace plan has finally come out, and the plan is, if you're a Ukrainian, not a good one. If you're a Russian, one you can live with. And if you're an American in the President Trump's team, you tend to want to believe that progress is supposed to be made. President Trump has made peace along the lines of putting pressure on people he influenced. Like we saw in Gaza, he played a very big role in influencing Netanyahu because he has a good relationship with Netanyahu to stop the war. He also played a big role in influencing the Arab states to put pressure on Hamas to also relinquish their arms and stop the war. So he puts pressure. He may just have come to the conclusion that the party to put pressure on now in the Ukraine war is Zelensky. Zelensky has insisted over the past 3 years that pressure should be put on the Russians because they are aggressors. And for that reason, 19 rounds of sanctions have been placed on the Russians. The Russians somehow have found their way in surviving all these rounds of sanctions. But President Zelensky and his European backers have always insisted that Russia, being the aggressor, should be the one pressure should be put on, not the Ukrainians. Nobody has ever tried to put pressure on the Ukrainians. Rather, they have been patted on the back, told that they will be supported, encouraged to continue to fight the war. President Trump, though, has taken a different approach. So today we got to learn about the 28-point peace plan. And this all came after President Zelensky met with the envoy of President Trump.
Best regards to him and the Vice President, of course, once.
President Trump and our Vice President pass along their very best.
By the way, if I can use this opportunity, I want to give you, yesterday they attacked our western part of Ukraine. So many people were killed. So many, so many details.
Yes, so President Zelensky was given President Trump's peace plan by the U.S. Secretary of Army, Daniel Driscoll, and his team. Before then, just before then, or just about the content of the peace plan and how it was framed and what is expected of the Ukrainians had been leaked to the press, and there was a lot of speculation as to what it is. But we finally have a clear idea of what it is. It has been circulated by, I think, no less a person than a member of the Rada there in Ukraine. He circulated it, and it's quite extensive. One, if I can just run down some of them, the peace plan includes no NATO membership, no EU membership, 100 billion in frozen Russian assets to go to Ukraine's reconstruction. The size of Ukraine's army is to be capped. I think it's at 500. Ukraine remain non-nuclear states. Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk are recognized as Russian territories. Kherson and Zaporozhye are frozen along the current contact line. From the part of Donetsk Oblast currently controlled by Kiev, Ukrainian troops are to withdraw. Both sides are to undertake changes of the border. They are not supposed to undertake changes of their border by force. NATO does not deploy to Ukraine. NATO fighter aircraft will be stationed in Poland. Russia will legally enshrine at the legislative level a policy of non-aggression towards Ukraine and Europe. The United States and Europe launched a major investment package for the reconstruction of Ukraine. The remaining frozen Russian assets are directed to joint American-Russian projects, long-term economic cooperation between United States and Russia, all for all, prisoner exchange, including the return of civilians and children, restart of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. The United States assists in restoring Ukraine's gas infrastructure. Elections in Ukraine are held 100 days after the agreement is signed. Full amnesty for all participants in the war, an agreement that is legally binding. Enforcement is to be carried out by a peace council chaired by Donald Trump. And in the event of violation by Russia, sanctions are to be reimposed. In the event of violation by Ukraine, the United States and Europe withdraw security guarantees. So they have assured security guarantees. But there's a bomb there, a very big nuclear bomb. If this peace deal is signed, 100 days after it is signed, there will be elections. There are some people who don't want to have an election. They're not too popular. They really wouldn't want to have an election at this point in time now. Nevertheless, the Ukrainians have, there's been a response from Zelensky. Zelensky put out a tweet where he did say that this is what he said in his tweet. He put out a tweet where he said he put out a tweet where this is what he said in his tweet. It's quite a simple one. The American side presented points of plan to end the war. Their vision outlined our key principles. We agreed that our teams will work on the points to ensure it's all genuine. We geared up for clear and honest work, Ukraine, US, and our European and global partners. Obviously, he didn't mention the Russians in this particular tweet. Nevertheless, Zelensky has been saying that he's going to speak with President Trump. He says he will talk to his team. He will look through it. He wasn't different from, it was a very much different approach. He was conciliatory this time. He was cool-headed and calm. He decided that he's going to look into the content of it. But obviously, there's a lot of this peace plan that already we know the Ukrainians will reject. A lot of it, especially territorial concessions, is not one that they really want to do. The Ukrainian polity has moved far right now. They are very nationalist now. All those fringe parties that weren't very popular they are now popular. Not that they are popular, but they are influential. They control the presidency to a large extent, and they will not want to see territories conceded to the Russians. Nevertheless, President Trump has put it out there, he has started to make word. The assertion now is that Ukraine should take it. We don't know what kind of leverage or what kind of pressure is going to put on the Ukrainians, but he has become very forceful in his language. And this comes very, very against the grain of what had been expected. He had put out sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft, and people were thinking that he would even send long-range missiles. But like I had said, President Trump will not do this. All that was just to ride through the domestic challenges he was having in Congress and the Senate then. And now that he has come, he has put out a very forceful peace plan And unlike Zelensky in the past, he's very cautious about the response to it. But despite his caution, the European Union, as Kaja Kallas has flatly rejected it. The French have rejected it. The Poles have made out statements that they reject it. And of course, the countries of the Baltic. These countries have an interest in having Ukraine continue to fight the war. It's Ukrainian bodies that are in the war. They contribute as they can, but ultimately it's the Ukrainians. They have an interest because if this peace comes, they worry that Russia will train their thoughts on them, strengthen their military within their own borders, and they also worry very, very seriously that President Trump may reduce American presence in Russia, in Eastern Europe. Already we hear that he's going to withdraw some of them from Romania and the Baltic states. These are the states that are both practically about Russia. And maybe the thinking there is that maybe they should change their way of thinking and start to become much more friendly towards, think about friendly neighborliness. Because the very fact that they have agency, they are part of a very big organization, have made them by far more virulent and bellicose and very, very, very antagonistic towards the Russians over the course of the past few years, at least in the past 10 years. We get the most amount of rhetoric against Russia from Poland, Estonia, Lithuania particularly, and Latvia. So these countries may be put on notice through pressure. The pressure is that Americans leave. That creates a sort of like exposure against them. So the Europeans have been hostile to it with the usual teams of hostile, Russia, unfriendly spokespeople have already said what they can say. We've not heard anything from the president, though it's their spokespeople that have been saying what they're saying. Anyway, the war is still ongoing. Besides that, they have quite a lot of intrigues going on within the Ukrainian space there. The energy minister has run. She's been sacked officially, but she has fled the country. She has followed Timo Mindish to flee. I don't know where she went to this time. Andrei Yermak, who people had thought would be sacked, they talk about the sack is still there. What rumor we heard today is that he took off to England to go and try and meet Zelensky to intervene and help him and save him from being sacked, but Zelensky refused to see him. We hear all these things. There's still a lot of political intrigue going. It may just be that because of this feeling of vulnerability by Zelensky, he did not need to be as aggressive as he had been whenever this kind of matters come up. So we hear him taking a much more conciliatory tone. And the Americans, though, when Caroline Leavitt was asked about this peace plan, it was put pointedly to her that it was not favoring the Ukrainians. She pushed back and said, no, the Ukrainians were part of it. We had heard that Umerov was in Istanbul. Apparently, he was meeting with some of the team members of the Americans. We hear now that Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff were having a lot of back-channel discussions with the Ukrainians and the Russians in coming to the positions that we have said outlined in this 28-point plan. So she pushed back and said there was extensive consultation with the Ukrainians before this was put out there. Anyway, the Russians continue to do. President Putin signaled very seriously today that he did something we've seen him do recently. He wore a military uniform and held meetings with his commanders. And it was, I tend to believe that this is a visual thing to just state. Yes, he met with his generals today in the Zapad group. The Zapad, I think, is Western. Commanders of the Southern and Western groups reported the situation. And in that, after that meeting, during the meeting, we got feedback from Gerasimov. General Gerasimov made a statement regarding the goings on in the war, then this is what he had to say.
Yes, Comrade Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the armed forces of the Russian Federation continue to carry out their operations as part of the special military operation. We are advancing across almost all areas, furthering the success that has been reached during the summer campaign. The enemy tries to stop our troops. It's concentrated on trying to destabilize the situation in the Krasnoarmeysk direction.
So Gerasimov gave an update on what has been happening, and it's quite impressive. One of the things that came out is that President Putin, while meeting with them, made very strong statements. He said that the political leadership in Ukraine is no longer a political leadership. Since last March, it has been a criminal group, an organized criminal community that usurp power. They hold on to power under the pretext of the need to fight Russia with the aim of personal enrichment. This is how has now become a well-known fact, as revealed by the anti-corruption investigations. I think it should be clear to everyone that these people are sitting on golden chamber pots, hardly think about the fate of their country and its people. Yeah, obviously, it's referring to the fact that among the things found from Timur Mindige's home was a golden BJ and a golden WC. So the generals gave their report, and the biggest one is that Kupiansk has been encircled. Kupiansk has practically been taken. But before giving his report, President Putin reiterated that all the goals and aims of the special military operation will be achieved. So this is just the way the news has been going today. President Putin is making sure that he puts pressure on the Ukrainians somehow. These are very powerful visuals. You can't deny that. It's one, it's in military uniform. Two, he's meeting his military team. And then three, the Russians are moving very aggressively and very progressively. Their movement in the battlefield is quite astounding. And we saw today that one of the great things that came out of it was we saw a situation where in Volchansk now, in Pokros, the soldiers are moving freely now. They don't have to have they are not worried again, because as the generals reported, there's been a lot of progress in that neighborhood. The military situation these are the reports I got from the military situation. The West Group liberated Petropavlovka, Yampol is fighting, and Kocherekov. Then it says that Kupiansk, we've liberated Kupiansk, actively advancing towards Krasny Liman. The South Group has fully taken control of the eastern and southeastern parts of Konstantinovka, started clearing the center. More than 4,000 buildings have been liberated. Most of Konstantinovka is planned to be liberated by mid-December. Russian troops have entered Seversk and are advancing in the urban areas. Masklikova have been liberated. Russian armed forces are moving towards the Krasny Liman. And then the offensive is developing north in the Klebanbek Reservoir. This is from the south and the west. There's also movement going on in Heliopoli. It's not a good time at all. But concerning all that has been going on around the world now, as we see it, and the Russian and Ukrainian situation, it comes to the point where I now have to look back again and say, what do we think will happen to Ukraine? What should be President Zelensky's choice? What is left to him now to think about? How is he going to solve this problem? His government is under investigation. He himself is in a very vulnerable position. The closest aides he have been investigated. He should be worried also, because he doesn't know what information has been put out against him. The attempts to get the money to give to Ukraine is beginning to be stalled. The Belgians have become a very big problem towards it. The Viktor Orban too is a big problem towards it. He says he will not. Fizo has said he will not. So what are the choices and the options left to President Zelensky? This strong move towards Russia, as the Ukrainians will see it, has really, really surprised them because they thought they were making some progress. We saw him making a Zoom meeting with 8 senators who had assured him that they will make sure that they put pressure on Russia and all the people buying Russian oil and gas. It turns out that no, what they have got is a script that is very, very, it is a script that's almost like telling you this is what you need to do. Zelensky is in a very bad place. His team is falling apart. They're worried about themselves. We don't even know what Umerov, if he came back with the Zelensky to Kiev, he's worried. Everybody is worried now. They are insecure. 2 governors, 2 ministers have been sacked. It is not a good time. He's very vulnerable. And then his biggest backers. We have a situation where Keir Starmer is having intense domestic problems, very serious domestic problems. He's being challenged and he may lose his premiership. Maybe not this year, but he'll be challenged definitely next year. So he's now doing some serious horse trading. He has been forced to look into the domestic matters because he tried to raise tax and that has backfired on his team. And that was the same thing we should remember that kicked out Liz Truss. That very talk about raising tax or cutting benefits, they are broke, to say the least. So Keir Starmer has to finally face domestic problems rather than run to Kiev. The same thing too with Macron. Macron had the benefit of hosting Zelensky. And what did he do? He became a salesman, trying to sell Rafale planes to Zelensky. One, they can't produce enough of those planes fast enough. He may not be in government in the next 2 years. And then 2, Zelensky just doesn't even have any money to buy those planes. So the one who can't produce the planes fast enough and the one who can buy, we're making deals for each other. And then we go to the Germans. The Germans have created such big worry. Friedrich Merz is very intent in supporting Ukraine. Today, we also heard the foreign minister of Germany saying that he needs to redouble. They need to really redouble in supporting Ukraine, especially as the winter is coming. There are so many points of concern that the Russians have put on Ukraine. They have put the energy infrastructure as a point of concern. They have put the loss of territory as a point of concern. And then they have put the fact that the budget cannot be rounded up and no attempt to steal their funds is working because the Russians continue to assert that they will take retaliatory action. That's also another point of concern. These points of concern, the train, the logistics, the heating, the gas, is now making it so hard for the government to focus on what to do for Ukraine. Every country now is taking one little bit. The Spaniards just put out information that they are helping the Ukrainians to buy parts, I think some weaponry from America for $100 million. That's what they have decided to do. Everybody can now see that without American money, they become so exposed that without the big budgetary allocations from Biden, they were just doing puny contributions, very puny contributions. They were doing more of diplomatic contributions than real physical financial contributions. And now it has blown up in their face. Kaya Kallas is very energized. She's moving everywhere, trying to raise money, but she's very laser focused on seizing Russian sovereign assets so that they can have reparation loans. That's what she keeps stating, and that's what she keeps saying all the time. The Russians are saying they will retaliate. So this move by Putin, very visual one, wears his military uniform. This is the second time in a month we should remember that he's having these meetings with Gerasimov and his military team. And he's insisting and saying that we shall achieve the special military operation. I wonder what President Trump is going to talk and say to Zelensky. I wonder how, when Zelensky will come to the realization that the coalition of the willing cannot support him, cannot help him, and if without America's help, the game is up. This is a game in its end game. In the battlefield, you will get a sense that it's in its end game. In the diplomatic space, It's almost in its end game. Ukraine just doesn't have supporters in the United Nations. All that hue and cry that used to be 3 years ago has just fizzled away. And then in the political space, it's also in the end game because its three biggest backers have clear and present challenges that have made it very hard for them to fly to Kyiv and pat him on the back as they have been doing almost every week for the past 3 years. So we just watch to see what will happen to Zelensky and his team. I want you to please give me an idea of what you think. Make your own projections, make your own ideas. Put it in the comment section. This is where I end my video for today. If you have any comments regarding other opinions or all the opinions expressed in this video, please put them in the comment section. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Do well to like and share. Until my next video, you have a good day.